Hey y'all, what's up? It's gotten to a point where I feel like I have to address some things. A child is dead, a son, a brother, a friend, and nothing will ever bring that back. Now, I do see the outpouring of support for the DeGroat family, for Matthew, and that moves me deeply. I really think it's a beautiful thing, honestly, to see the community come out and show the support that they've been showing. But there is another family. There is another circle of people who are trying to break through the same kind of nightmare. My family. Now, I've sat back and I've watched long enough. And I've watched so many people who don't even know what's really going on say some pretty nasty things about my family and about what we represent. And I just want to say the devil's in the details. I feel like there is so much that you guys just don't even understand. I've sat back and at this point, I think it's important that I catch you up to speed. And I'm not here to stoop to the level of some of the people that I've seen in the comments, because I could. But I want to remind you that no weapon formed against me shall prosper, me or my family. But I do want to pull the wool off your eyes, and I really want to ask you to really look at the whole picture. It's clear that there's a narrative that's being pushed. However, I know that you guys have a lot of questions, just like I do. And you're right to have those questions, because I feel like those questions deserve to be answered. So I really want to help us navigate those questions together out loud. Clearly, this is a botched investigation, and I think that it deserves a closer look. While some of y'all might not understand, I don't expect you to. He's my nephew. And if you were in my shoes, you'd be doing the same thing. So, I forgive you in advance. However, while one family is fully understood, the other family is struggling to get people to even see what happened. And that's my family. However, I want y'all to look at this closely, because as you look closely, you will discover that there is what they call racial disparity. And I want to explain what that looks like in real time. Racial disparity is not just about slurs or extreme white hoods. It's who gets humanized and what gets framed as a threat. You know, a lot of times it's whose GoFundMe we rush to share and whose name we let sink quietly out of the feed. It is which story instinctively we call a tragedy and which one we quietly file away as complicated. Most of the people are seeing what media and their social media feeds put in front of them. And that's what's happening with you guys. So you're missing a lot of details and you're missing a lot of points. However, I do think your questions are valid. Now, just so you know, when you see these things on your social media feeds, you guys start to react to these stories, right? And why? Because these stories are framed to, they basically describe the faces as beloved, and they introduce you with words like armed, possible threat, suspect. This is how structural racism works. And nobody has to say the word race, all right? You don't have to say it out loud. I think that it's loud enough. But it basically helps shape whose grief gets honored and whose is minimalized or ignored. And I say that to say that let's look at this together. So I need all my internet detectives to do what y'all do. I definitely want to bring up some clips for y'all. And I definitely want to hear what y'all think. And yeah, free my nephew. As I said, let's do this together. Here's the first clip, right, guys?
Tragic story out of Orange County where an 11-year-old boy shot and killed himself, and apparently while playing with his old. And now police say that brother is missing.
Hold on, let's run that back, y'all.
Story out of Orange County where an 11-year-old boy shot and killed himself, and apparently while playing with his older brother's gun. And now police say that brother is missing. The tragedy unfolded.
We're gonna pause it right there, right? I've seen a lot of people asking, wasn't it the brother's gun? And a lot of people's like, no, it wasn't the brother's gun. But mind you, what does the story say? The older brother's gun, right? And it also states that the older brother got missing. Did you guys know where he was? Because I do. I'm speaking from experience. My sister called me that day while I was at school before she even got to my nephew. We're just going to drop facts on y'all real quick. But we're going to let this keep rolling.
This morning at a home of North Miller Street in Newburgh. Eyewitness News reporter Darla Miles is live there with the very latest. Tragic story, Darla.
It is heartbreaking, and this whole neighborhood is grieving Sade. The police here in Newburgh and forensic crews are still inside of the family home conducting their investigation after this early morning shooting, but neighbors describe the shrills and the trauma and the grief that played out in real time when this mother and her two other sons came outside screaming, crying about her son being shot in the head, and that was the beginning of a very emotionally taxing day for this community.
Devastating. My kids play with him. I know him. He stayed at my house. Sad, really sad.
Inside of this home on North Miller Street in Newburgh, sources tell Eyewitness News that an 11-year-old boy playing with a gun accidentally shot himself.
All right, we're going to pause it right there. Now, where did they get this information? That's one of the questions you want to ask. Where did they get the specificity, like the specifics, right? Where did the specifics come from that this was the older brother's gun and that he ran away and the mom was looking for him? Where did those details come from? It came from somewhere. How did they get access to that information? That's what I want to know. Don't y'all want to know? Another thing I want to point out is that if you look here closely, it says it happened at the home in North Miller Street after 8:15 in the morning. Do y'all see that? Now, I just want to tell you, I used to teach in the Newburgh district. Okay, I think I have, 12 years I did up there? And as a teacher, first period is over at like 8:05. So why is it that this woman, what happened to truancy? Is that not applying anymore these days? How is it that there was an adult in the house and she's allowed to have all these kids, including kids that aren't her own, inside of her house when they should be at school? How is there no accountability for that? Okay? And if you look, it also says the mother confronted the older child about having a gun and he ran off. Sources say he was later found. Okay? So where is the accountability here? All right? And with all these children involved, another question you have to ask yourself is, why is there no public statement from the Child Protective Services? Especially when children are involved. Why have they not made a statement? Why? I know that there are inconsistencies in the stories. I know this because last Christmas, where y'all think these kids were? At my grandmother's house. And guess what? She didn't call to check on them. And a lot of y'all know my grandmother. Now let's get back to this because we're not going to get too personal. Let's get back to the investigation. Now part 2, we want to look at, This is when they start flipping the script of the story, right? Teen charged with murder and death of 11-year-old Newburgh boy, police say, right? Now, if you scroll down here, let's read this. It says, a 13-year-old male has been arrested and charged with a second-degree murder in the shooting of an 11-year-old boy, police said Friday morning. The suspect is not related to the victim, according to police. The 11-year-old victim died Thursday where he was shot and killed around 8:17 Thursday inside a Newburgh home. Newburgh police recovered a firearm while investigating the shooting and located 3 juveniles of interest, they said Friday. But where did they locate them? Because that's another lie. As I stated before, my sister brought my nephew down to the police station. I know this for a fact because she called me after school. Actually, I was in school. I had to literally take a break in my day because I had a poetry class that day. And I had to take that phone call because my grandmother was out of town. Now, it's interesting because I'm looking at here, it says, even the local snug program showed love, but it's like they knew my nephew. My nephew was part of snug. Y'all didn't try to reach out. It's a lot of biases here that I just want to highlight. But the real questions here are, when did the narrative change to that? When did it change to that? How? How? When did the narrative change that he did that? Because I'm going to just tell y'all, my nephew got to speak to my family before my sister brought him down. Okay? And he wasn't the only one. There was another kid that validated his story. Okay? So where did they get this story from? Because as I told you, I told my sister, call me when she got next to my nephew. And I spoke to her before she got to him. There's a lot of inconsistencies that y'all aren't seeing, and I just want to point this out. So ask the right questions, okay? When did this switch over to a 13-year-old being charged? I just want to point this out again. It says it right here. It remains unclear exactly how the tragedy occurred Thursday. What do you mean it remains unclear? They recovered the firearm. You would think that if they recovered the firearm, you might want to ask, well, did they do a check on the hand for residue? Did they check for residue? That's another question you want to ask. Were all the kids checked for gun residue? Since the first article stated that they all were playing with the gun. And then it says 3 juveniles of interest were identified and quickly located by police, which we know that's a lie because, as I told y'all, my sister was with my nephew and the other kids because they were up in a hotel room when my sister found my nephew. Okay? Because I was wondering how he got there. So, they're not going to release it. But, like I said, for them to act like they identified and located these people, it's just terrible. It's terrible, y'all. It's disgusting, honestly, that they would try to derail a child like this. Now, of course, my nephew, when he first got taken in, they gave him a public defender, right? Because obviously they didn't think that he could afford a real lawyer, okay? So this was his public defender at first, right? And he strikes me as the kind of guy who doesn't really want to step on his buddies or his pals because clearly they're friends outside of work. I just want y'all to see this because he states an interesting statement. I get that an 11-year-old passed away, but really look at the statement. It's almost like there's already an agenda in place. So let me bring this back real quick.
Loss for everybody involved. Today's purpose, it doesn't really matter whether this was an accident.
He just stated it doesn't really matter if it was an accident, but it does matter because 2 people's lives were changed that day. And what matters is the truth, getting down to the truth. But this guy seems like he doesn't want to step on somebody's toes, clearly. And guess what? No weapon formed against us shall prosper. I'll say it again. No weapon formed against this Melvin family, the Owens family, shall prosper. But I'm gonna let y'all hear that again.
11-year-old, everybody involved. Today's purpose, it doesn't really matter whether this was an accident or a crime. 11-year-old and sadly dead today. And nothing can change that fact.
Nothing can change that fact. Absolutely not.
The 13-year-old is being held at a local juvenile facility, and hearts are broken after the shooting.
Now, obviously, there's only so much I can really say. But they obviously released a couple things. Now, I want to break this down, too, because I need y'all to understand that before this incident happened, there was another shooting. And a lot of people don't even realize that I've been back and forth to Newburgh. But I want to embark on that a little bit more. Now, y'all just remember the incident that took place, and I also need to explain that my nephew turned 13 2 weeks before this incident happened, so he was just a 12-year-old, okay? Now, in the last year, he's had a major sprout in growth, okay? So he looks a lot older than he is. But I want to bring it back to this article with the police, because in this article right here.
New this afternoon, Newburgh police are now investigating another shooting at a public housing complex. This time, a 12-year-old was shot in the hand. Residents of Mullins Apartments tell News 12 it happened right at the edge of the complex. The mother, City Councilman Omari Shakur, showed us where a bullet was lodged in her front door. Residents say this is the fourth shooting in the last year, and prior to that, they rarely had any violent incidents. News 12's Ben Nandy is in this community this afternoon, speaking with people who live there, the housing authority director, about how they plan to address this sudden spike in violence, and we will have a full report tonight at 5 o'clock. We're told the child who was shot in the hand is expected to recover.
Now, it's interesting. I want to bring that up because that 12-year-old, guess who that is, y'all? The brother. That 12-year-old that was shot that night that I'm telling y'all to do y'all research on is the brother. And I can remember my nephew crying because he's the one who had to call 911 because somebody shot his friend. Okay? And it's interesting because they said the shooter remains at large. But now it's interesting even more that they're trying to tie this to my nephew. I just want to also state that, at a certain point, my nephew had to put his plea in, which is not guilty, for obvious reasons, which I also want to make note that I'm sure you guys aren't aware of because y'all weren't there that day. So what I can say is I bet y'all didn't know that mom told my nephew and that other boy to run. Why would she tell them to run? Okay? Bet y'all didn't know that. People keep asking accountability about the parents. But like I said, the mother was in the house with them. Why did you not make someone else's kids go to school? Why would you allow them to linger? You have to ask your questions, because isn't that child endangerment? Especially if it was the brother's gun already. And apparently people know that this gun was his because there's other people in the hood talking about it. And that's what I find funny. So, my job here today is just to show you that there is a narrative, okay? And through this narrative, my family will make it through. But I also want you to see that it's pretty one-sided. And as I told you, y'all saying my nephew being 13, like, he just turned 13 2 weeks before that. Would it make that much of a difference if he was still 12? What happened can't be erased. But a fair trial can be given with the evidence that proves his innocence, because you are innocent till proven guilty, correct? But not in y'all mind, because y'all already been poisoned. So you've already been engulfed with the narrative. When you don't have facts or proof to support this narrative, you're going by hearsay. You're going by word of mouth. But speaking of word of mouth, like I said, these statements that were made in the press, where did they get this information from? It came from somewhere. So how can you just flip it like that? Your guess is as good as mine. But as I said, we want to get to the bottom of it. So I need y'all to go do the digging and hold some of these people accountable, because as I said, why have not CPS spoken up yet with all these months that has come by? Why not? They know it too. I just want y'all to see it. I want y'all to see the game that's being played, because that's what's happening here. It's a game. And someone wants to climb the ladder. Someone wants to climb the ladder. And it's crazy because when I read this one article, I'm going to pull it up in a second, it stated that, you know what, wait, I'm going to pause on this. But it stated that the mom called in for the 911 call, if you look it up. And it's funny because I told my sister before this all happened, when she told them to run, I said, that's when she made the 911 call. And then to go back and read the article just confirmed it, which is crazy to me. Because it's like, you as the adult was the trusted oversight, and you did not do your job as the adult. I also want to mention how they twisted that story, as I explained to y'all. It went from the brother's gun, right? Now look, how did they say that the gun is no longer the brother's now? How? Look at this.
For the first time, prosecutors revealed in court that the gun used in the shooting belonged to the suspect. Prosecutors say the teen shot DeGroat in the head last month inside the boy's Newburgh home. They also described a troubled life for the 13-year-old
Now it's funny, they said that my nephew is troubled. My nephew spends most of the time with my grandmother. He does spend time with my sister. She does allow him to go out and have fun. He has been known to go and be around the armory and places like that. But it's interesting how they're trying to pin the gun on him. My nephew has no access to getting the gun. He's not in the streets enough to get one. That's the first thing I want to know. Secondly, like I said, he has lived in a hotel. And that is due to my sister waiting for housing. She's been waiting for almost 2 years now to try to get housing through the system, and she hasn't been able to get much help. I want to explain that. Also,
7th grader saying he lived in a hotel, missed school, and recently tried to harm himself.
Now I explained that. I explained the harm. He wanted the calls because of him being bullied. My nephew was heavily bullied at school, and a lot of people did not believe him, unfortunately. And I think because he was getting taller, he looked a lot older. I feel like that's why even some of the older kids tried to bully him. And there's proof of that, because I literally spoke to students who told me about the bullying that was taking place. Students who went to South Junior High slid in my DMs. So there is proof out there, people. You just have to look for it.
During a mental health crisis, prosecutors revealed that he had also been involved in 2 gun-related incidents in the city. The teen's
He has not been in any gun-related incidents in the city. That's why I think it's amazing that they're trying to pull this now. Because like I said, there was an incident earlier where he cried because he knew his friend got shot at. And now they're trying to twist that and use all those things against him. Very interesting.
defense attorney didn't comment on those allegations, but says she's concerned about how prosecutors are handling the evidence.
We look forward to uncovering the truth about what happened here and proving my client's innocence of the murder of his friend.
The courtroom was filled
And now
with
if you look at
loved ones
this, as you look at this, you know, now they have people outside. Like I said, they're building the narrative. They're building the narrative, guys. So just keep watching, because now they have turned this into something even more. But if you weren't there, you wouldn't know. But see, I was in and out of Newburgh. So there's certain things that I'm aware of that you guys don't realize I'm aware of. Why? Because when I'm in Newburgh, a lot of people don't see my face. I also want to discuss the disgusting threats that are being sent to my sister and the threats that are being put on my nephew as we speak. You know, The other family was able to put order of protection to protect themselves. However, my family was not. And ever since this has occurred, my sister has had to put cameras up because the brother has been antagonizing my sister's place of staying. He's been going over there, creating a lot of chaos, and the police are acting like there's nothing that they can do about it. Also, I want to put this out. There are people who are sending more directs through the internet. Well, I'm going to just say this. You can try. I don't know how far you think you're going to get. Like I said, no weapon formed against me or my family shall prosper. And I'm going to make that very known. Because I feel like God got the last say. Y'all think it's over. It ain't over. You know why? Because you can fool people, but you can't fool God. And it will be revealed. Everything will be brought to light. Everything. It don't make sense, y'all. It don't make sense. It don't make sense. On top of the damage on the deceased hand, I wonder where that's from. Why that's there? Why is his hand got a mark on it? What do y'all think that's from? Now everybody know when you shoot a gun, there's a blowback, right? There's a force that comes with that. Why? Because he didn't do it. And why? Because there's enough evidence to prove it. So, y'all can talk all the BS you want to talk, but just know, this shit ain't over. And we will definitely have all the support that we need to make this successful. We will let the truth be heard. You will not quiet us anymore.